It's okay. I'll add it while we're going. Jeff's going to have to start it. What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the PokerNews podcast. It is June 14th. We are live from the World Series of Poker at the Rio All Suite Hotel and Casino. There's a ton of action going on. It's already... We're talking 9 p.m. in the evening, so we've seen an entire day of stuff, and Jeff has been on the floor of the 10K horse event the entire day.
We are down to 3 players. We are on a dinner break. We have Dario Sammartino, who entered the day as a massive chip leader. He had almost half the chips in play. Daniel Ospina has taken that chip lead back, then gave it up, then took it back. Then Greg Mueller got in the mix, and then he took the chip lead, and then got really short-stacked, and then took the chip lead, and then got really short-stacked again. So we have been back and forth for a while. At this point, at the time that we're recording this podcast, and also live on Facebook, all 3 guys are relatively even. And they have the option here to take a dinner break, and that is an option that they exercised. So we decided... let's knock out a podcast.
Let's bang one out. And This one is sponsored by 888 Poker, who are also a sponsor of the World Series of Poker. So a big shout out to them, and a big shout out for giving us the opportunity to do these sort of live things and keep you guys up to date. So actually, I wanted to talk to you a little bit in covering the 10K horse. We just saw Michael the Grinder Mizrahi yesterday take down his 5th bracelet, and for me, watching this, I want to say that was, deuce to 7, 08 or better? Was it stud? I have to check.
What?
I'm talking about the grinder. So yesterday the grinder won.
The 1500 stud 8 or better.
Stud 8 or better.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got it out of all of the games you mentioned.
There was like something in there.
And you said 8 or better in there. So yeah, it counts.
It was in there somewhere. Yeah. So he wins his 5th bracelet yesterday, and I came out about 3 hours before he won his bracelet, and his heads-up opponent had 1 big blind at the time. And so I thought, it's a safe bet for me to maybe just hang out here and wait for a win. Cut to 3 hours later, and so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the sort of dramatic shifts in these split pot games, and also the dramatic slow non-shifts in the split pot games, which then turn into these crazy dramatic shifts. And what I thought was the most interesting thing was watching them work out what each of them had every single time a card was drawn or taken. They're like, oh, I have the 2. Okay, no, I have the low here. No, I have the high. Oh, but they're literally sitting there debating. And I was wondering, for watching, being a dealer, being a player, how often are you watching the players still figure out what's going on as the cards are being dealt?
Yeah, it's like in some of the more complicated games, everybody's helping everybody out. You don't just rely on the dealer in a game like Omaha high-low. Because, it's just very easy to miss certain things. I mean, even at this 10K horse final table, the players are still saying, I have this, he has that, this should be the high, this should be the low, this should be a chop pot. Because, the dealer's under the lights, it's a high-pressure scenario. The players, same thing. They're feeling a lot of pressure. They're fighting for a World Series of Poker bracelet. It's very easy to miss little things, especially in these split pot games. The games in horse like Hold'em, obviously, much easier, Raz and Stud. But Stud 8 or better, Omaha high-low, it gets a little complicated. And you said it, I think we're so used to short stacks and no-limit Texas Hold'em tournaments. 12 blinds or less, I got to get the chips in. All in, all in, all in, all in, all in. Well, in limit play, if you're down to, 3 or 4 quote-unquote big bets, you're still, totally fine. You can't lose a ton of pots in a row, but you're still, okay. And 3 or 4 might have been a bit of an overstatement for exaggeration, but especially if you have 10 big bets, that's super, super comfortable. I was talking with Maury Eskandani, basically the godfather of everything that's created poker content-wise, and he's telling me, when these 3 guys are at 12 big bets, that this could take a while. That's a totally reasonable stack. There will be no panic in any way whatsoever. So, to that point, when you're down to 1 or 2 big bets, but can double, then all of a sudden you're fine for a little bit. Then you double again, then you're fine for a little bit. This Russian player by the name of Mikhail Samin, or sorry if I mispronounced that, party poker guy, Christian from PokerNews estimated this. He was all in and called in some form over the last 2 days 20 times and every single time won or chopped to stay alive.
Wow.
20 times. That's a sign of these horse games and the swings.
That's a statistical extreme unlikelihood in No Limit Hold'em. And thank you guys, by the way, for the sweet compliments. It's good to see you, our girl Gigi.
Hello,
and
Gigi.
Absolutely to Juan, you are more than welcome to come. If you've got money.
You
That's
got
the
cash.
beautiful thing about poker. It's anyone can play anytime. So before we move on too much to today, I just want to wrap up a few things that happened since our last podcast, or happened yesterday. Steven Song won a 1K No Limit event. Ryan LaPlante was at the final table. I think he came in sixth in chips or somewhere around there. He ended up busting in third. I saw him after he left. He clearly was still happy, had a smile on his face. It was a pretty standard spot where he busted. And I spoke to Steven Song after he won, and this was for more than $340,000. Obviously life-changing money. Mm-hmm. Although I did read that Steven Song is from Greenwich, Connecticut, which is one of the most expensive zip codes in the country.
He's doing fine.
I think he's doing okay. But I asked him what this means, and he said, he's come close to bracelets. He actually even came close to a bracelet already this summer. He's come close several times before, and that this just means everything. But then he did also say he's going to invest this money with his father, who is the smartest person he knows. So whatever his father is doing, Steven Song, if you want to let us know, we're all out there for you. But I love to see these. I love to see these 1K events where you're getting 340K, 420K, when players are walking away with money that's not just going to keep their bankroll sustained for the next 5 or 6 years, but is certainly going to change their lives. And then I also just love to see players busting in third, but leaving with a smile on their face, knowing that, they played their best game.
We were talking before we went on air about bust-out interviews, and how with some players, they can be a little awkward, a little frustrating. I mean, which is completely understandable. You have a shot at this life-changing money that Sarah's talking about, at 350, 400K, even more in certain spots, and you bust out a couple places short. Sure, you win a lot of money, but, the dream was there. It was incredibly achievable. So you can understand if the bust-out player doesn't just want to stand there for 5 minutes and then have us ask him, I'd hopefully not considered stupid questions, but questions that they might consider stupid in the moment. So it's a tricky process. So to see somebody like Ryan bust out in third and just have a smile on his face, just happy-go-lucky, or Chance Corneth, like we talked about last week, who did not run well at all in the 2 final tables that he was at, and just, happy-go-lucky, couldn't be nicer. That's really cool to see, I think.
I completely agree, and it's definitely the sign of a consummate professional. And you brought up
that comment from Mario is pretty good.
Oh, thank you, Mario, and glowing. It's really good to see, and it's interesting because after talking about these mixed games, I just came from railing the 3K 6 max, which is down to 6 players. Kyle Cartwright just busted in 7th in a relatively standard spot. I want to say he was. Actually, I'm not going to say that because the 3 hands before that I'm not sure. But basically,
somebody
he got it in 6s to ace king.
Yeah, exactly. And Cartwright shipped it in the big blind for about 23, 24 big blinds with 6s. Nicholas Howard had the ace king in clubs.
And this Nicholas Howard, he's playing a lot. He's got a solid stack for sure. But it was interesting because then I saw several of the players. Basically, they had one of the other short stacks had doubled up in a 2-outer spot, and the whole table is clearly irritated and stressed out. When that happens, the pay jumps, the ICM is so big in these. In a lot of these tournaments that every decision is so devastating. And when you look at the payouts in the 6 max, I was just talking to Angel Guillen. You're talking about the difference. 6th place is $60,000, just shy of $60,000. First place is $415,000. So the difference here is crazy. And it's one of the things, and I don't know if you get this, Jeff, but it's one of the things that freaks me out so much looking at what the players were guaranteed starting the day. I think it was something like $15,000. There was 20 players left. But it was an amount of money that really I was thinking, if you are putting in $3,000 and you get down to the last 20 players, it's really hard to get to the last 20 players. It's so hard. And you're thinking that you're super deep, and then walking away with $15,000 is nothing. You need to be one of those players that's in that top 3 or 4. And you can see these players have these, every moment, every situation for everyone else is such a sweat, and they're so intense about it. And it's fantastic to watch, which also brings me to what's streaming tomorrow, which is not the 3K Six Max.
Oh, but
The marathon.
The marathon on CBS All Access. David Tuchman and Jamie Kerstetter will have the call. Back to what you're saying, because I think it's such a great point, especially for professional poker players who are very aware of this. They know that no matter how good they play, the opportunity to be in the final 15, final 20, whatever it is, with a World Series of Poker bracelet and a massive first place prize on the line, those opportunities are going to come few and far between. Again, no matter how good you are, that's just variance in a nutshell, especially for these professional poker players who are playing tournament after tournament after tournament. So imagine the pressure that everybody feels in these kind of spots. It sets up a very intense, dynamic atmosphere, especially in a tournament like the marathon, where by tomorrow they'll be going for 6 straight days, when average stack has been like anywhere from 50 to 80 big blinds throughout the entire tournament. That's how deep they play the marathon. It's just it's an unbelievable accomplishment. There's so much endurance that goes into it, and you would just think like, what do you mean? You're just sitting there playing cards. But it's like, it can be so mentally draining, which probably makes the winner feel even better by the end of it to have fought through all that.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. And I think it's interesting, too, something that I've noticed, or something that I at least wanted to talk to you about, because being a part of the stream team, being a part of the people who are involved in the stream, obviously the ultimate goal of everyone in this game and in this industry should be to get more people involved in this game and in this industry. So the stream is huge. I think it's really exciting. But at the same time, sometimes decisions are made based on the stream, but then other times decisions are made just randomly. So actually just sitting on the side of the 3K Six Max, it was originally scheduled to play down to a final table today and then have a 4th day tomorrow, which they decided not to do. And I was thinking, if it was a stream, they would just have to do it, and that would be great. But some of the players were saying that they already had family flying in as soon as they got down to the final table, or even when they were at 7 players, they started flying their families in. And then at 6, the tournament director said, no, we're going to keep playing 10 levels no matter what. We might even finish tonight. We're going to try to finish tonight if we can get to 11. Wow. And, I was thinking at what point, I think people are always complaining about the stream because it's like, we're scheduling things around the stream. But actually, the stream is one of the only things that is keeping things consistently on a schedule where we agree to, we have to do it because this is the stream. What do you think about just deciding, because something happened pretty fast, to keep playing potentially to a winner?
Yeah, it's a great point. The 3K Six Max drew the short straw because it was scheduled, quote unquote, to come to an end the same day that the marathon did. So before the series even started, Poker Central and CBS All Access, they have to get together in the World Series of Poker and sort out these events. And they said, we're just going to go with the marathon. Now, they have the ability to change it last minute. They usually don't unless we see a Negreanu, Helmuth, Ivy, etc. pop up at a final table. So when you look at the 3K Six Max structure sheet, I believe, and I can pull it up to confirm, but based on what you're saying, I'm pretty sure this is right. It's scheduled for a 4-day tournament.
Yeah.
And so on day 3, it says play down to final 6.
Yes.
And then those 6 come back for day 4. And that's why I think that in that specific scenario, you need to stick with what the structure sheet says. You wouldn't change the blinds.
Exactly.
Because the structure sheet is like the boss here.
If you give it to the players to decide, and all the players agree that they want something, fine, great, it's their money. But if the players are wanting their friends and family to have this experience, or they're wanting to have this experience, and then you just make some unilateral decision, I think it was a little bit weird and unfair. Although, when I was speaking to the bloggers, they were saying that there's been several of these tournaments that were scheduled for 4 days that probably should have only been scheduled for 3. Yeah. But I think this is the overcorrecting that we've had 2 years ago, where there was all these tournaments playing until 4 or 5 in the morning, and they said we're not doing that anymore. So, I mean, it's always a really tough balance, but I definitely think it's really tough to schedule these things effectively. And I can't imagine, I've never been in the spot of wanting to get your family out to see it.
Yeah, and you want that to happen because, like we just talked about, World Series of Poker final tables, again, no matter how good you are few and far between. So to have the opportunity to celebrate that moment, even if you do not win, in front of your family and friends is a huge, huge opportunity. So you said it, a couple years ago, tournaments were just going way too late. They were just ending way too late. It's that simple. They started to correct that. And then when they would push back a day, sometimes the stream would go on at a super late time, or you couldn't have a set start time for the stream because it played almost too short on its third day, for example. You'd come back with 14 players, and they'd say, well, the final table of the 3K6 Max is going to come at some point today. It might be a couple hours, and so you can't have a set schedule. That's bad for the PokerGo's and CBS's of the world. So this year, they thought, let's just play down to 6. On the second and last day, we'll just play down to 6. But then the pros chime in and they say, well, we don't want 1500s to take 4 days, and so it's like there's so much going on. I can't imagine what it's like for Jack Effel and the WSOP staff. They're correcting it. They're correcting structures. They're making things more appealing to the pros while keeping that fourth day to play down too. But if your tournament's not scheduled to be streamed, it's like you're at the mercy of the tournament directors when everything should just be according to the structure sheet, unless, to Sarah's point, every player agrees that, okay, we finish it tonight. It's just like for dinner breaks at final tables. Every player has to agree to forego a dinner break. And if one player says no, they'll go on dinner breaks. And so that needs to be the same rule in place to see if they continue.
I totally agree. Since we talked about the marathon a little bit, I think we should address it. Last I looked, Roman Koronev was ahead, but since then I've heard he's way evened out. And I was really surprised because yesterday there was quite a few names that I knew in the field, quite a few. And coming in this morning, literally Roman Koronev was the only person I'd ever seen before. Do you recognize any of these players?
I recognize the name Joseph Liberta, and I think I've seen him play before, but Francis Anderson, Jared Koppel, Dong Shang Peng, Joe Curcio, your boy Roman, Joseph Liberta, and Matt Russell. That's it. That's all that's left in the marathon. To your point, I also recognized a lot of names going into yesterday's play, the day before when this tournament was still very deep. It's just, it's like running bad, quote unquote. If I'll be honest, last night I was here watching the end of the 10K horse play down on the final table, and Phil Galfond was at the official final table, but we played down to 6 for the stream, as we just discussed. And so, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm rooting for Phil to make it because, this is great for the stream if Phil Galfond's on. A lot of people are going to click on it. Whenever Helmuth or Negreanu or Ivy is deep in a tournament, we're kind of pulling for him to make the final 6. We're not rooting against anybody, but, it's just so much better for the broadcast. So it's just, it just goes back to, balance, luck of the draw. Sometimes you're going to run really well on a final table, sometimes not. That takes nothing away from these players. I mean, you have to be a very good poker player to go deep in the marathon because that structure is way too good. You can't just luck box your way to a win in that one.
And I think that's a big reason why I was anticipating seeing a lot of players that I recognize get to that spot.
Yeah.
And especially, after you've put that much time and effort into it, these players have a lot invested in this tournament. Now, I did a little bit of research today. We spoke on the last one about the 25K draft drama / controversy. I spoke to Daniel. I spoke to ODB. I spoke to Frank Casella. I spoke to Phil Galfond. I spoke to tons of players to get their opinions and thoughts and get each of their sides and sort of the logistics. And the last question, and I was just wondering, Jeff, if maybe is I'm when are we going to be confirmed about this? How long are they giving it?
Oh, yeah.
How long is this sweat?
Process? I guess, though, they have plenty of time. That 50K is not until mid-July. I think, like you, especially today after you talked with 1 million people about it, you don't want the conversation to last till July, right?
No,
you're ready for it to be over, right about now. So if the arbitrators could decide now, that would be fantastic. David Tuckman, I think you missed our shout-out to you earlier.
We did say that.
And I gave you a shout-out on the stream today. Just a lot of David Tuckman love.
A lot of David Tuckman hype. We're missing the Tuck. We need more Tuck in our life. And we want to shout out to Mario and John Lee, 2 of our really loyal podcast and Facebook Live fam. More people are into the Tuck. The Tuck's taking over. So the ultimate consensus, though, just to talk about the 25K in terms of, so Daniel is on the side of, and really what Daniel said is he wrote the rules. He can't find them, but he did write them. And he said that ultimately, as the chairperson, if you will, of the 25K, that he could probably have just made the decision, but he thought it was the most fair to put it to arbitration. So it's Isaac Haxon, Jason Somerville, and Phil Galfon are the three people that they chose to be the arbitrators to decide whether or not I keep wanting to call it the FOFT, the final 50, the final FOFT, whether or not that's going to be part of the draft. And for those who don't know, I'm not sure if we talked about it last week, but ODB runs the $2,500 fantasy.
$500.
What is it?
It's just $500.
Oh,
we could have bought in. We could have had a sweat.
PokerNews advertising is wrong then.
That's not good.
Yeah, geez, PokerNews,
we'll
get it
take
together.
that up with the higher ups.
Get it together.
Yeah.
But so ODB runs that one. But what's sort of implied that a lot of people don't consider, or maybe is not directly considered, is that there's tons of side action based on fantasy points. There's tons of side bets going on, and actually ODB spoke about how much this is going to affect some of his bets, which are much bigger than his action in the fantasy draft. But so Daniel is going to present the case for including the 50 in the fantasy draft. And it's going to be Matt Glantz and I think Josh Schwartz is what ODB said, who somehow I'm not that familiar with. But they're going to make the case for not having it, which actually ODB said was something he really respected, because Matt Glantz, he said, has the most to gain from actually including the 50. But from a logic perspective, Matt just said, no matter what, I don't think this makes sense. And so he's going to make the case. They'll make the case to the three arbitrators, and then they left it up to the arbitrators to decide how they wanted to go about the process of making their decision. Phil said that between the three of them, they decided that they'll all three hear the case together, but that they'll make their decisions without any discussion separately. And then obviously it'll be the majority of those three, and everyone will honor that decision. But I think it's super interesting, the whole drama, the whole discussion, this how we always talk about the poker community policing itself. I think this is such an interesting example of the poker community policing itself and figuring out a really fair, democratic way to work through a problem. And I wanted to throw out one thing and ask you what you think about this. So, for example, we talked about a little bit of the side action, and one of the things that ODB mentioned is that he has a side bet with Alex Foxen, Bracelet bets, and he said Alex Foxen is definitely probably one of the favorites in the 50K.
For sure.
ODB also, by the way, has Justin Bonomo on his team, so he should also probably be like wanting the 50K which he doesn't. But he said for him, this actually really affects his bracelet bets with Alex Foxen, and for almost everyone, it's going to affect their bracelet bets, whether or not the 50K is part of the bracelets. And I'm like, man, this is so crazy how one small micro change. But then, this is something Frank Casella mentioned when I interviewed him, is he said they had been talking about adding this event before the schedule was, or before the draft actually happened. But he said he doesn't know who knew that. And so I don't know for sure. I definitely don't think anyone would have had something like that affect their decision and not say something. But have you heard any rumors of this?
Yeah, I heard that pop up. But like you, I don't know if that's a case where 2 people knew that it was being discussed or where 35 people knew that it was being discussed. And it's interesting how Matt Glantz is on that one side of the argument when he'd have the most to gain by it being included, and Daniel's on the other side where he's arguing it should be included, but his team is not set up well at all for the 50K high roller. So he would have a lot to gain by it being not included. So I think that this is a very fair arbitration process. As far as bracelet bets are concerned, though, I feel like this is a different animal because let's look at Alex Foxen. Let's just pick him out specifically. That 50K high roller is going to get like 80 entries or so, maybe, with about 50-ish players. That'd be my best guess. Maybe it gets more entries. I'm not sure what the crowd will be like considering it's after the main event.
But I think that's a fair guess.
Yeah, regardless, it's a pretty small size. So if you have one more opportunity, if you're Alex Foxen, you have a pretty big edge all of a sudden in a bet that you made when you thought that event would not be on the schedule. I say pretty big. It's going to look minute. It's going to register as 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever the math wizards figure out. But it's definitely an edge for a guy like that. Now, if you add fantasy side action, like which player is going to get more 25K fantasy points, I think if you cannot come to an agreement that you just have to go with whatever the arbitration panel decides. Because the arbitration panel, I mean, it just seems like they're going to come to a completely reasonable ruling on whatever side of the coin that ruling may lie. So I think you just have to go with whatever they say. I think that makes it easier, and I think that's what David Baker's doing with his $500 fantasy league. He's like, we follow the $25K for everything. We're going to follow the $25K for this.
So to answer your question, Kevin, this is happening towards the end of the main event, if not after the main event. It happens towards the end of the main, right?
Yeah, while the main is still going. I think July 8th or so.
So we only have 5 minutes because Jeff has to go back and do bust-out interviews for a living. But I think that you and I should have a sweat on what's going to happen with this.
Okay, so
you have a side, right?
Yeah, I will take the it will be included side.
And I'll take, even though so far from my research, I think more people are on the side of it will be. I think it shouldn't be, and I want to put a bet on that. So I don't know what we can bet. Like, we can't buy each other drinks or anything.
Right.
What should we bet you guys?
Yerba mates, yerba mates.
Yerba mates are free.
Because Sarah just raised this refrigerator, so
like 60 times
it's
a
not
day.
going to be worth it. Yes, you
don't
guys
tell my
us.
midwife.
Yeah.
You guys, the audience out there, please figure out what we should bet each other, and we will keep you posted as this whole thing goes down. We'll be with you guys in a couple days. Maybe Sunday, maybe Monday, depends on how much fun, crazy action goes down. Actually, I'd say today was a relatively slow day. Tomorrow, same thing. We don't have too many final tables. Action gets crazy. Like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I feel like there's just like final tables, like 3, 4, like bracelets happening all the time. But we have the second day ones of the double. It's not. They're not
double
calling
stack
it
tomorrow.
doubles.
I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna just try to last to dinner break or something this time. But yeah,
Jeff, I need you to do this. Do this for the PokerNews podcast family. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Of course, we'll be back with you guys as soon as we possible. Oh, gag costume during a stream. Kind of like it.
Oh, not a bad idea.
Also, maybe like during a whole day. Just saying.
Oh,
nothing like a bust-out interview
not a bad
with
idea.
someone in an awkward outfit. Sure, Morias can
that
get
one,
behind
that one won't fly. but for this, sure.
You guys, Jeff's wearing makeup because of his important job. So also, can we ask him?
A little touch up.
Does he look? How much better does Jeff look with makeup? Everyone should know he's a handsome dreamboat with or without.
I pile that on.
Thank you so much to our sponsors, 888 Poker, for this Facebook live stream. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will catch you guys in a few days from the World Series of Poker 50th annual at the Rio All Suites Hotel and Casino. Jeff Platt, I'm Sarah Herring. Deuces.